Good morning, and thank you for joining us for just an informal follow-up on the Q&A session from last week's flock health for broiler production. So Andrew's just said, I think most people are on the call. This will be recorded if that's okay with everyone, but it won't be posted online. If anyone doesn't want it recorded, just let us know and we can stop that. It's primarily just for internal use, and if folks want to reference it again. So joining us again, we have Vickie Bowes, an avian pathologist working for the Ministry of Agriculture and also an independent consultant who worked with poultry producers across the province. We also have Curtis Smith, the owner of Poultry Abattoir in Creston, to help answer some questions. And finally, I just jumbled around, Clayton Botkin has also joined us today. I'll let you introduce yourself, but he's on the line to help address questions regarding provincial regulations related to production, processing, and marketing.
Well, regulations are probably the least exciting part about raising poultry.
Which is why it's great to get it out of the way.
There you go. Yeah, we'll put you to sleep first. So good morning, everybody. My name is Clayton Botkin. I was a poultry specialist with the province of BC for about 8 years or so. I'm currently working at Agriculture and Agri-Foods Canada, where I'm a senior program manager in the agri-science programs there now. Vickie and I and our colleague Tony had been delivering small flock workshops for, well, Vickie's been doing it a lot longer than I have. And we basically traveled about the province talking about the various topics that you guys have been discussing so far. I'm a recently licensed poultry judge with the American Poultry Association, one of 3 in BC now, and one of 14 in Canada. And I guess I'll just jump right into the topic of regulation. I just want to put it out there right now. I have no knowledge of the new meat processing regulations. They were unveiled, I think, in the spring. And to be fully transparent, I am not familiar with the new requirements for what there may be for on-farm processing or anything about licensing of actually doing the processing activities on farm and then marketing that product. What I am familiar with, though, is the production side. So regulations around the Natural Products Marketing Act that arise from it, and particularly those that establish poultry as a regulated commodity in BC under Canada's Supply Management Program. And so I'm sure you're all aware, but just for a quick recap, the Natural Products Marketing Act establishes the BC Egg Marketing Board, BC Broiler, BC Chicken Marketing Board, which manages broilers, BC Turkey Marketing Board, and the BC Broiler Hatching Egg Commission. Each of those organizations has a mandate to deliver on a regulated marketing scheme, it's called. It's a piece of legislation that enables them to govern themselves and establishes their board structure. Each of those boards has set up different levels of requirements for regulation, permitting, and reporting. Chicken permits people to grow up to 200 birds per year for themselves under a personal use exemption. For a $20 permit fee, you can grow up to 2,000 birds a year, and those birds can be marketed. BC Egg has a similar program where the maximum number of birds, number of hens, egg-laying hens you can have is 99 without a permit, and with a permit that number climbs to, I believe, 399. That process is a little bit bigger in that they do a biosecurity consultation with you as a new producer, and they require permitting. BC Turkey allows up to, I think, 50 turkeys per individual or for personal consumption. And then I think it's up to 150. I can't remember the exact number with their permit program. In terms of eggs, so under the current regulations, and I believe these come from the Ministry of Health, you are permitted to do farm gate sales. And if you're selling at farmers markets, it's considered an extension of farm gate. So you can sell your own eggs at farm gate, but you can't sell eggs for others. And retailers in BC are required by legislation to purchase and retail only graded eggs. egg grading is regulated by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And interestingly enough, actually, egg grading stations have been a pretty significant area of growth in BC. I believe there's something like 33 or 34 registered egg grading stations. And the process to become a registered grading station it's not overly onerous. And it adds a lot of value in terms of food safety and traceability. So if you are looking to sort of upscale and upgauge your egg business, I would encourage you to take a look at that piece of legislation and maybe reach out to your local CFIA office. They do have regional offices, and I think they have one in Cranbrook. So that's kind of a high level overview. And then maybe if there are any specific questions, I'm happy to take them and do my best to help you.
So it's not a big deal to get these permits. It's actually just a bit of a, I mean, they don't really do a lot of oversight. So when you go up to the personal exemption and you go beyond that and getting a permit either from egg or chicken, it's not a big deal. And it does give you that freedom to expand quite significantly. And the whole idea of the marketing side of it is you can't really sell to a restaurant. You can't sell, I don't know, Clayton, is there something around hatching egg sales?
Yeah.
Table eggs?
So the way that the regulation is for hatching eggs right now, only those birds that are used as broilers are regulated under the Hatching Egg Commission general orders. So if you're selling hatching eggs that are broiler chickens, which also now includes Taiwanese chickens and broiler silkies, then you may be subject to regulations from the hatching eggs. But I don't believe there are currently any provincial regulations that restrict or impose conditions on hatching egg production. Where you may get challenged is under CFIA's supply flock regulation, which I'm not actually even sure where that piece of legislation is at. It's been under review for like 3 careers of different people. And I'm not sure if that actually is adopted yet. I know they had a draft out a couple of years ago, but it's been a slow process developing those regulations. And those regulations really are governing breeder flocks, broiler breeder flocks, layer breeder flocks, and hatcheries, and what goes into commercial hatcheries and how they're regulated. The changes are pretty significant, and that's why I just don't feel confident enough to knowing them well enough to comment. But I would suggest inviting someone from the meat inspection program to maybe give your group a presentation on where those regulations are and the implications that they have for those looking to do on-farm processing. I suspect the interest in on-farm processing goes far beyond poultry. I know it's been challenging across the province to find sources or locations to process red meats as well. And so I would see that having a much more broad audience as well.
So I just wanted to throw this in. So this follow-up presentation is really just to try to address some of the things I had to go over so quickly. I like this little picture of the preparation for brooding. They've had some really nice embellishments for enrichments for the birds, like hanging just grass for them to peck at. Again, we talked about reading the birds. You can see over to the top right, the birds are nicely distributed. They're at the feeders, they're under the heat lamps. So there's an area that they can get away from. In particular, I really do like their grow out situation. They've added these hay bales for the birds to peck at, and hopefully as they get older, they'll jump up and strengthen their legs. They are using nipple drinkers, which I think is a really good move to make when you're having, if you have the opportunity to install nipple drinkers. That's a really good positive step. The other thing is, they've got the birds all along the feeder line. So I really like the situation that they've set up here. So I just wanted to share that with you. So there was a question around mortality patterns. And so just to go over that, we know that the broiler has very well-defined expectations for what their weight gain is going to be, their mortality, the food consumption, that kind of thing. So that's where you go back to those manuals from the breeder companies that show you what an expected these parameters in an expected grow out. So what a mortality pattern is, and again, this is like the basis of population medicine, where the individual bird may not have a lot of value, but cumulatively, it's what it represents for the rest of the flock. So a mortality pattern will capture the onset of an increase in mortality, the duration of the mortality, what that looks like, when it stops. And you can define your mortality pattern with or without your culls. And sometimes, even if you can actually generate two patterns, again, these are just graphs over time that you can overlay your culls over your mortality. Your flock mortality rate is calculated by at the end, it's the number of deaths divided by the number of chickens that were placed, and you multiply that by 100 to give you your mortality rate, which is in a percentage. So you do need to know what the normal mortality is for the population. So in general, and again, these are very general, and these are coming from the commercial guidelines in the codes of practice, you'll see that you can expect to lose up to about 1.5% in the first week, which is considered to be expected. While you're growing out birds taking them out to 8 weeks, then you can expect an additional 2 to 3% loss. Once you get birds into production, and this is referring to laying hens, you really don't want to lose more than 0.5% per month, because they're pretty hardy. So those are normal mortality patterns out of the recommended codes of practice. But I have to say, this is another kind of concern, is that in fact, small flock holdings and birds on range, you can almost double those expected mortality. They do actually have an inherent higher mortality rate for those kind of operations versus what the commercial barns are doing. And so then, this is basically what we would see in a grow out period. It's capturing that early first week mortality, which is always expected to be a little bit higher, but of concern here is, why is mortality going up at the very end? And so once you kind of get an idea, and this is good to capture, so you can define it for your specific operation, and then subsequent flocks can be compared against that. So this is just basically another mortality graph that shows the egg production has come down at the same time the mortality has gone up in this flock. So it tells you that something, some disease related or management related issue is not only affecting birds and killing them, it's also causing the flock to drop out of production. This looks to me very much like an infectious disease, because what generally happens, again, this is egg production, it starts to climb back up and recover. And that usually means the birds have gained immunity to whatever it has challenged them, and then they're off and running again. So that's kind of what we talk about mortality patterns. So we've got a defined expectation. And then of course, when you're exceeding that expected number, that's the time to get an investigation done and figure out what is actually going on. Not only because at the time you may have things to do to address the health of the current flock, but subsequent flocks may be impacted if it's a disease issue. So it's important to get it figured out what's going on. So mortality patterns, we use them very much as a diagnostic tool, and these are some mortality patterns that are consistent with what we can presume. Don't really look at the number of loads here or the numbers on this one, because I just wanted to capture one that showed birds that there's a high amount of DOAs and deaths in the first 2 days. And that is usually related to transport, or it could be related to hatchery issues. And then you can see how the mortality straightens out. So anyways, that's the picture we see with transport stress. When you have infected navels or dehydration or even starve outs, what you'll see in this mortality pattern is in fact placement for the first 2 days was normal, and then we start to lose them. And that's because the infection now is taking over, or the birds are fully dehydrating. So it lingers past the first few days. We also see that pattern with starve outs. This is a picture, again, we start to see, and these are called spikes in mortality for obvious reasons. So here at 2 weeks, we get this big spike, and this is related to necrotic enteritis. So birds are dying, and then possibly, you know, the flock might have been treated or whatever, but everything dropped back down. This is what we're seeing with inclusion body hepatitis, which is a viral disease of broiler chickens. Again, a very sharp spike, but a very quick recovery. And this is just an experimental map that showed late pre-shipping mortality consistently over several flocks in succession, and this was related to ILT. You can actually see how it captures that early first week mortality. So hopefully that addresses the question around what mortality patterns are. There was a question around cervical dislocation. So I just want to reiterate that a blow to the head or thoracic compression, certainly in a chick, is not acceptable. Those are very horrible ways to die. So for small numbers of poultry, decapitation is quite acceptable, but it has to be a single swift action. It can't be sawing or, you know, I'll tell you what I do for decapitation in my own chickens is a killing cone, hanging them down, having someone pull the neck straight, and then I use some pruning loppers and literally decapitate in a hanging position, as opposed to just a neck slit without any kind of severance of the spinal cord. So to learn cervical dislocation, I think it's important to practice. If you get any dead birds, maybe practice on them. Cervical dislocation manually, at least, does not work in ducks and geese. They just have a much more ropey neck. It's very, very difficult to do that. Something I've learned the hard way: don't exceed your strength capacity. You have to be in control of the entire process. And once you start to do a cervical dislocation, you have to commit and carry through. There's no hesitancy is probably the worst thing, and then it will really traumatize yourself if you don't proceed with it through. So when done properly, cervical dislocation, manual, using your hands, is humane. It causes the neck to separate just below the head. And it is a continuous motion and a firm pull. You literally are pulling the head away from the body. You can brace the body against your hip from retraction, and you'll feel that pop when it's done properly. Even though the bird is technically killed very quickly and cannot feel anything past that, they will convulse for even up to 3 minutes, just because of this nerve stimulation. So just, you know, I have a couple of slides here. Again, I realize you cannot look at a two-dimensional slide and then feel confident in going and doing a cervical dislocation. This is something you definitely need to have tried yourself. So what's happening here is the left, this is a right-handed person. So the left hand is now bracing the bird's legs. He's going to place, he's holding the bird's legs and he's going to place it on his left hip. And what you'll see is the fingers are going to go around the bird's head, and then he's going to close the fingers, and you can see how the bird's head is cradled between, because what's going to happen, he's going to tighten those two fingers, and those are going to anchor the head, and he's going to pull the head with those two fingers closing around the bird's neck. And then it's just literally a pull, and then it's a twist of the wrist. So in fact, the bird's head is almost in a 90-degree angle, and that's where the severance is going to occur. So I know it's not very good. It starting to give you an idea of manual dislocation. So this was Bill Cox, who was a colleague of ours. And so we realized when he did his cervical dislocation, so it was actually quite different than the way I learned. So this is me trying to do a cervical dislocation to help you. I do it differently. I hold the bird's wings back, and then I also put it on my left hip. And what I do is actually cup the bird's head in my hand, and then I'll close my, make a fist. But the most important thing is the beak is showing through here. So I have a full grasp of the bird's head. And then I do almost like a biceps curl. And what will happen is I'm pulling the head and the neck away, but I'm also doing a 90-degree twist, as well as a 90-degree flexion of the neck. So again, I guess there's more than one way to kill a chicken. So if everybody can kind of become familiar with the technique, and I just want to offer that, yes, there are training sessions with some of the poultry veterinarians in Abbotsford, but as you know, I work at the veterinary diagnostic lab in Abbotsford. And so I just want to encourage anyone, it's very possible if you're ever driving through Abbotsford and want to drop in and learn how to do this, I'm very happy to help you go through this process and get some confidence in how to do a manual cervical dislocation. So that's an open invitation, because, you know, of course, I want everyone to feel comfortable to do it. And it's important to me that it's done properly. Oh yeah, so then the job is done. So those slides are available. The other thing is, it's not only manual, you can have assisted or mechanical cervical dislocation, and this works very well for older birds or bigger birds. There are these euthanasia devices called the Kirchner turkey euthanasia device, which is just literally like it closes and will sever the neck that way. I don't know the manufacturer. This one, I really do like that one. You can see the killing cone here, but you can also see how this is going to do a very clean cervical dislocation done. And it's designed in such a way that it'll hold the neck in place. And so I think that's a nice opera. I don't know the technical details of where to get that though. You know, again, as far as euthanasia, there's the captive bolt style percussive trauma that they work very well when they're done properly. You do need training. You absolutely, in bigger birds, need help with this or some way to restrain them to get that proper placement. But they are very, very expensive. Yeah, so I think everyone in broiler production should really become familiar with manual cervical dislocation. And again, for the sake of time, and I threw this back up because we never did get to go through about what the Condemns can tell you. I think if everyone could just take note and maybe get a copy of this to understand that once you get the feedback from the processing plant as to why there's been a downgrade or condemn, then you can go back and take a look at what the predisposing factors were and what can be done in the future to prevent that. To get, and you'll see my favorite word in the prevention, cull. I think culling is such an important management tool. So again, you know, look at the bottom, when you have a high number of DOAs, once they hit the processing plant, they're not going to be processed. So you always look, is there underlying disease? And this is where a necropsy can be very helpful. Maybe they died from suffocation, maybe they died from temperature extremes. So again, it's very important. Hepatitis, hepatosis, if you've got an actual inspected processing line that's done by an inspector, you'll often hear this term hepatosis or hepatitis. Very generic, non-specific to anything other than that there's a visual abnormality with the liver. Since the liver is a filtering organ, it's really important that healthy birds do not have gnarly looking livers. So it's always important, because you're going to get the hepatitis, hepatosis diagnosis or disposition at the processing plant, but that doesn't really tell you what was behind that. And there's a whole bunch of different approaches. It could have been bacterial. It could have been a viral infection like the inclusion body hepatitis. We often get chronic liver changes because there is a low-level coccidiosis or necrotic enteritis, which is a bacterial infection that's usually associated with coccidiosis. So it becomes important to figure out what was behind that disposition. You know, it comes down to, if you have a lot of bone fractures and bruising at processing, well, those are physical injuries. You can kind of age bruises to tell you whether they were involved with the ketchup. Maybe it's the fact that the transport crates were overcrowded or wings were sticking out when being loaded, that kind of thing. So anyways, I think it's important to get that information back from the processor, because there's some very important things that can be done to prevent the same thing happening in subsequent flocks. Somebody's going to talk about pastured poultry. It's not going to be me. I just want, I don't know why it jumps. Anyways, I think it's pretty fundamental. It would be great to have someone who's got a lot of experience in this. And I think Curtis will probably address this, but it's important. We really are putting those birds out there, but we need to protect them. I really like this picture. It's come from the Yukon. And so these are pastured or at least pastured poultry that is being raised in the Yukon. And the one thing I really like to profile is the best thing on earth are these electric fencing. And I think that's very, very helpful for the smaller predators. This facility also put electrified fence to keep bears out, which was another challenge they were having. So it's really important when the birds are out there, we protect them from the weather. We protect them from moisture, because that's going to affect their feet, and it's also going to affect their ability to keep themselves warm. And again, if you get a cold bird or a chilled bird because they're wet, then that can certainly spill over to water belly. I think the most important thing is certainly protecting from predators. I put toxic plants in there. I probably wouldn't have thought of it unless I'd seen this picture, because what I'm seeing is a lot of other than just grazable. I don't know what that yellow flower is, but it reminds me of a case we had where birds died from absolute liver damage related to eating buttercup. And it was because somebody was cutting buttercup and threw it over into the fence, into the pen for the chickens to eat. But they had stripped their pen of all greenery, and I guess they were hungry for the greens, and they ate it and they all died. So again, I'm looking at this. It doesn't look like this is a very mobile unit, because you can see how degraded and there's no green inside where those chickens are. So you need to be able to provide them with clean water. What you'll see here is they have usually it's a gravity fed line to a Plasson or a Bell drinker here. It's really important to be able to keep the feed clean and dry and not having it spill over and get mold growing in it. I think it's important for dust bathing opportunities, especially if they're going to be, again, stocking density is important. Harborage from the sun, and also from other dominant pen mates, because they're in a group situation. So to me, those are kind of the fundamental needs. I'm sure there's probably more, but I'm just going to go through very quickly some slides to just show you. I mean, when I look at some of the places that chickens are being raised, I think it's fabulous that we have a bird that is so highly adaptable. But you can see again, I like this down here. These obviously look like they're easily mobile. Again, the water gravity fed to the drinker. So again, I'm probably not the best one to talk. These are again the Yukon pictures, perimeter fencing all the way around, and then they are able to move these around. The last thing I want to talk about is your resources. So the BC Ministry of Agriculture, that vet lab in Abbotsford is an incredible resource. And I want to encourage everybody, take that number down, 1-800-661. It's a toll-free number. You have 2 veterinarians, myself and Dr. Tony Redford, and our job and certainly our passion is to work with small lot holders and try to help them through. We are the vet lab, so we're a diagnostic hub. A lot of times we really want to see, we'll help you with diagnoses. We can, it is an accredited lab, so we've got all the testing facility at our fingertip. But there is a highly subsidized rate for small flock holdings. So anything less than 100 birds has a diagnostic fee of $25, which is an incredible deal, and to be able to do a full diagnostic workup. So if you phone us, we can talk about what's happening. You can describe to us. We're doing a lot more through email pictures. Sometimes we really do need to have the samples or the carcasses for us to be able to confirm a diagnosis, but basically that's a great resource, and it's free. And then I also want to just provide with you, Small Flock Poultry Health Services is my specialty practice that is part-time out of Gabriola. So I'm available through smallflockpoultry@gmail.com. So anyways, take advantage of the Ministry of Agriculture's vet lab in Abbotsford, because we'll do whatever we can to try to help you do better.
There was a question last time also about restricted versus continuous feed.
We know that ad lib feeding or continuous feeding is an element of commercial production in an intensive rearing. The broiler, I've come to the conclusion that I think the reason the broiler does what it does is I've decided there's a little satiety center in the brain which tells you to stop eating, that push back from the table. They don't have this, so they're going to be eating and putting on weight, and then they're going to be pulled out of there and marketed very quickly. So now we're going to take a modern broiler and put it into a situation where we're not going to be pushing it, which is good, because I think some of these production related diseases are eliminated through slower growing. Now I'm not talking about the slow growing broiler where they're really restricting it. I am a fan of I think there should be full access to feed for the first 2.5 weeks. But I'm also a fan of pulling up feed at night for birds between 2.5 and 4 weeks. I think the birds are going to do fine, and putting it back down to full feed. The other option is to allow them to clean their feed up. So leave them let them clean up their feed pan and leave it empty for about 2 hours before you replace it. Again, giving them that break so that they actually have the ability to empty their crop. The truth is, even if you monitor the weights, they will start to slag a little bit because they're not on full feed. But as long as you put the feed down again at around 4.5, 5 weeks, there's something called compensatory gain, and they're gonna do well. They're gonna come right back up. That restricted feeding at that level, as long as it's not too severe, because of course, especially if you're feeding medicated feed, so it's presumed that they're going to be eating that feed and getting that dose to control the coccidiosis. But I do think that you can restrict feed, and you'll get a benefit in that you're going to have better legs. The other thing, because when you put the feed down, what are they going to do? They're going to jump up and do a little jog over to the feed pan, because they're under the impression they're starving, so they're going to have to eat. But I really do like the idea of being able to empty their crops and flush them. So I am a fan of restricted feeding, usually between 2.5 and 4.5 weeks, but then going back on. And again, you can do it by lifting the feed at night, or just allowing them to clean the feed pans, and then just giving them that break. So
no, just more of a addition to that. We've had people bring birds into us that they've said that they've raised them on that restricted feed program, and for what comes in, for what they chose or how they chose to raise their birds, we've never seen, I guess, everybody's level of success or what they want in the end of their product, what they want to come out in the end at their end product is different. But for what we've seen come in, that people have restricted the feed or used fermented feed process, they're always been generally smaller. They have been like in that 2.5-2 pound range. So if anybody's wanting to go that route, like, just from my own suggestion, I'd really do your research on it and start small with that aspect, whether it's in that aspect of restricting feed diet or fermenting feed. A lot less to lose in a small batch than there is in a big batch of birds. But just do your research if anybody is looking to go that route. And that's my thought on that as well.
But the trick is to get them back onto full feed. It's not like restricted through the entire growth period. It's going to be that delicate time where they're going. And again, this really addresses legs. It addresses cardiovascular, but you have to get them back onto full feed there and give them the time to compensate. The other thing I forgot to mention is it's really interesting to me about pastured poultry is I've had 2 cases, and we do a lot of work for the SPCA, but those are cases of neglect, but I've had 2 cases of range birds that have come in. These are our birds, and they're buying a titled bird. I'm not going to call it, I don't want to say the name, but anyways, it's being marketed as a range broiler, that these are well adapted. I think it's a lot of garbage, but I think they've just somehow got a pretty red looking bird that they say put them out on range and they're going to do extremely well. But I think people have misinterpreted. I've seen 2 cases of absolutely starved birds. These birds have died from emaciation and starvation because the presumption was that they're going to thrive on range without being provided any supplemental feed. So, you know, again, just be careful, because even though you can presume that these birds are somehow adapted to range feeding, or range, and that they're going to forage there, and that'll be good enough. It's not good enough, especially if the birds are in tractors or in containment. I mean, they're really limited to what's underneath their feet. So like I said, I've never up until that point seen starved birds until there was a specific breed marketed for range feeding, with the recommendation that that's all they needed. Birds need a supplemental source of complete feeds.
If I'm sure either Curtis or Vickie may have opinions on timing your flock to get it to process at the right time.
Yeah, it's the question that we get asked plenty of times. It is, and we recommend everybody who does bring birds to us to schedule a processing date with us before they order their chicks, so that they know they have a date secured in order to bring their birds to us for us to process. But in the aspect of how long should your grow period be for your own cycle of birds, it's totally up to it. It falls back to how well you do in that 7-week, 8-week, 9, 10-week period of growing. It does. I had someone ask me when they heard this seminar was going on. They asked me, he said, well, what's the best way to manage your flock health and again the grow of your bird? And I pointed at him. I said, it's you. Well, I said, it's the person doing it. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah. I said, it all comes back to how well one manages their flock. It is. That's, I guess, the bottom line of it. Like, we can give you a date, and whether it's at a 9-week or 10-week or as little as a 7-week, we're just providing a date, but you guys are doing the rest of the work to ensure that what you're bringing is adequate for yourself and what you're expecting your own outcomes to be. So it just comes down to the management of how you manage your time in that time frame for your grow period. So
Little black pin feathers, is there anything you can do to reduce them? Is there a purpose of them? How do you avoid it? The ones that are tough to pluck.
Pin feathers?
Well, they're the black ones, you know, they're almost like ingrown.
Where the feather dies and it just develops into a black stem or looks like a blackhead.
Yeah,
they're really hard to pick out, and if we get too many of them, that come in on one bird, we just skin that area out. We do. Instead of it's a little off the question here, but that's the route that we chose on how to handle that when we get that situation come in, because it's either we spend half an hour on one bird plucking little blackheads out, and then but from a time standpoint on our side, like, do we ourselves want to spend half an hour And like we have employees, do we want to pay an employee half an hour for one bird? Or do we just take the route of we skin that area out? And that's what we chose to do. But what causes this?
Yes.
I think a lot of it leads to conditions, and then I think nutrition at an early age and not getting feathered out properly. I don't know, maybe.
What's the location of these? Where are these located? Where are they on the bird's body? Where, I mean, oftentimes you can get impacted feather follicles with a feather in it is, you know, we see that quite commonly actually in like canaries and budgies. And often it's a sign of trauma. So I would expect to see those kind of things if there's a back of thighs.
Backs and thighs.
Oh, backs and thighs.
And thighs. Imagine they're pecking at one another.
Yeah, I wonder if it's trauma based or something is preventing the feather from fully. Why is it black though? Is my question. It's like, I'd like to see this. Hey, you know, if you get some of this, can you send it my way? I'd really like to take a look at this and see, is there actually a feather you pull out, or is it like the follicle?
No, it's the follicle. It is.
Does it leave a pock mark?
No, just like if there was a normal feather that come out of there.
Yeah.
And we again, this is again from our own experience and seeing what comes in and talking with people. But if you watch your birds at a younger age and they're pecking on one another, they're pecking those feathers right out, or they're breaking them right off, and then that feather head dies in there.
Yeah.
And then that feather head stays in the skin. And like you said, the backs and the thighs, that's where, again, it goes to the whole watching, like we discussed on last week, watching them at that younger age. And because if they don't have the proper nutrients at that young age, they're going to start, I guess you could say, they get stressed because they're not getting what they require out of their feed. And again, that's from our own experience. Again, maybe Vickie has a different thought on it, but
no,
they start picking on one another. They do. And I imagine there's some people here that seen it go as far as like cannibalism starts happening. And but the ones that don't make it and don't die from being picked on, that's what we see a lot of, is that they get them blackheads. A lot of the times, 90% of the time when we see birds come in with blackheads on them where feathers should be, there's an issue in the program somewhere. And a lot of the times it's with the feed at an early age.
I would like to take a look at these and see, like, if you can get a picture of these. Are they actually in a pattern, or are they just random single individual black?
They can be in a patch. They can be.
Again, I come back to trauma, something that's preventing the follicle from expressing the feather. I've
actually jump in there, since I've raised broilers. I raised 400 broilers at a time for 4 years in Rossland with bears and dogs and all the rest. And there's really no substitute, I would say, for that poultry net. Okay. Absolutely no substitute. And then the other thing is, I raised them for a long time with just the poultry net and shelters, and I stopped doing the full shelter. You also want net for avian predators. It's only a matter of time before the avian predators find you. So in the end, it ended up being Fort Knox. But that was my experience. If you wanted no predators, you had to keep them all out.
Just depends what kind of bear you got coming in too. I had conversation with one guy the other side of Cranbrook this summer. He had a grizzly coming in, and the difference between a grizzly and a black bear. And he said he'd see this grizzly come in one end of his coop and he'd go out the other end. He would. And I don't know if I don't think he had netting up, but what you have, I guess, coming in.
Well, it's critical that netting is extremely hot. And so the thing about poultry netting is it draws your voltage down extremely quickly with any amount of length. So yeah, you either need a huge charger, and so it's better to have a plug-in than a solar,
Yeah.
If you can plug in and run a cable out to your field, even better. If you're on solar, really check that voltage. If it's below 5,000 volts, I'm not feeling happy it'll keep a bear out. 3,000 volts is fine if it's just coyotes and dogs, but you'll want 5,000 volts to keep the grizzlies and black bears out.
I think that's it.
No, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to engage with this group and take advantage of your resources. Don't be afraid to try new things or to tweak things, and just like I said, lean on us at the Animal Health Center. We'll try to help you as best we can. You've got a good group with these advisors. I mean, it's amazing. So yeah, you know, there's going to be successes, there's going to be failures, but they're all learning opportunities. So yeah, it's worth doing. So good luck with everybody's endeavors.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Vickie.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything.
And thank you, Curtis.
All right, have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.